I was in a great difficulty. An urgent journey was facing me. A seriously ill man was waiting for me in the village 10 miles distant. A severe snowstorm filled the space between him and me. I had a carriage, a light one with large wheels, entirely suitable for our country roads. Wrapped up in furs with the bag of instruments in my hand, I was already standing in the courtyard, ready for the journey. But the horse was missing. The horse. My own horse had died the previous night as a result of overexhaustion in this icy winter. My servant girl was at this very moment running around the village to see if she could borrow a horse, but it was hopeless. I knew that, and I stood there useless, increasingly covered with snow, becoming all the time more immobile. The girl appeared at the gate alone. She was swinging the lantern. Of course, who is now going to lend her a horse for such a journey? I walked once again across the courtyard. I couldn't see what to do. Distracted and tormented, I kicked my foot against the cracked door of the pigsty, which had not been used for years. The door opened and banged to and fro on its hinges. A warmth and a smell as if from a horse's came out. A dim stall lantern on a rope swayed inside. A man, huddled down in the stall below, shoved his open blue-eyed face. "Shall I hitch up?" he asked, crawling out on all fours. I didn't know what to say and bent down to see what was still in the stall. The servant girl stood beside me. "One doesn't know the sort of things one has stored in one's own house," she said, and we both laughed. "Hey, brother, hey, sister," the groom cried out, and 2 horses, powerful animals with strong flanks, shoved their way one behind the other, legs close to the bodies, lowering their well-formed heads like camels, and getting through the door space, which they completely filled only through the powerful movement of their rumps. But right away they stood up straight, long-legged, with thick, steaming bodies. "Help him," I said, and the girl obediently hurried to hand the wagon harness to the groom. But as soon as she was beside him, the groom puts his arm around her and pushes his face against hers. She screams out and runs over to me. On the girl's cheek were red marks from 2 rows of teeth. "You brute," I cried out in fury. "Do you want the whip?" But I immediately remembered that he is a stranger, that I don't know where he comes from, and that he is helping me out of his own free will, where everyone else is refusing to. As if he knows what I was thinking, he takes no offense at my threat, but turns around to me once more, still busy with the horses. Then he says, "Climb in," and in fact, everything is ready. I noticed that I have never before traveled with such beautiful teams of horses, and I climbed in happily. "But I'll take the reins. You don't know the way," I say. "Of course," he says. "I'm not going with you. I'm staying with Rosa." "No!" screams Rosa and runs into the house with an acute premonition of the inevitability of her fate. I hear the door chain rattling as she sets it in place. I hear the lock click. I see how in addition she runs down the corridor and through the rooms, putting out all the lights in order to make herself impossible to find. "You're coming with me," I say to the groom, "or I will give up the journey no matter how urgent it is. It is not my intention to give the girl as the price for the trip." "Giddy up," he says and claps his hands. The carriage is torn away like a piece of wood in a current. I still hear how the door of my house is breaking down and splitting apart under the groom's onslaught. And then my eyes and ears are filled with roaring sound, which overwhelms all my senses at once, but only for a moment. Then I am already there, as if the farmyard of my invalid opens up immediately in front of my courtyard gate. The horses stand quietly. The snowfall has stopped. Moonlight all around. The sick man's parents rush out of the house, his sister behind them. They almost leave me out of the carriage. I get nothing from their confused talking. In the sick room one can hardly breathe the air. The neglected cooking stove is smoking. I want to push open the window, but first I will look at the sick man. Thin, without fever, not cold, not warm, with empty eyes, without the shirt. The young man under the stuffed quilt heaves himself up, hangs around my throat, and whispers in my ear, "Doctor, let me die." I look around. No one has heard. The parents stand silently leaning forward and waiting for my opinion. The sister had built a stool for my handbag. I open the bag and look among my instruments. The young man constantly groups at me from the bed to remind me of his request. I take some tweezers, test them in the candlelight, and put them back. Yes, I think blasphemously. In such cases, gods do help. They send the missing horse, even at the second one because it's urgent, and even throw in the groom as a bonus. Now for the first time, I think once more of Rosa. What am I doing? How am I saving her? How do I pull her out from under this groom 10 miles away from her with uncontrollable horses in front of my carriage? These horses, who have now somehow loosened their straps, are pushing open the window from the outside. I don't know how. Each one is sticking its head through the window and, unmoved by the crying of the family, is observing the invalid. I'll go back right away. I think as if the horses were ordering me to journey back, but I allow the sister, who thinks I'm in a daze because of the heat, to take my fur coat. A glass of rum is prepared for me. The old man claps me on the shoulder. The sacrifice of his treasure justifies his familiarity. I shake my head. In the narrow circle of old men's thinking, I was not well. That's the only reason I refuse to drink. The mother stands by the bed and entices me over. I follow, and as horse gnaws loudly at the ceiling, lay my head on the young man's chest, which trembles under my wet beard. That confirms what I know. The young man is healthy. His circulation is a little off, saturated with coffee by his caring mother, but he's healthy and best pushed out of the bed with a shove. I am not improver of the ward, and I let him lie there. I am employed by the district and do my duty to the full, right to the point where it's almost too much. Badly paid, but I'm generous and ready to help the poor. I still have to look after Rosa, and then the young man might have his way, and I want to die too. What am I doing here in the endless winter? My horse is dead, and there is no one in the village who will lend me his. I have to drag teams out of the pigsty. If they hadn't happened to be horses, I would have to travel with pigs. That's the way it is, and I nod to the family. They know nothing about it, and if they did know, they wouldn't believe it. Incidentally, it's easy to write prescriptions, but difficult to come to an understanding with people. Now, at this point, my visit might have come to an end. They have once more called me for help unnecessarily. I'm used to that. With the help of my night bell, the entire region torments me. But as I am closing up by my handbag and calling for my fur coat, the family is standing together. The father sniffs the glass of rum in his hand. The mother, probably disappointed in me. What more do these people expect? Tearfully biting her lips, and the sister flapping a very bloody hand towel. I am somehow ready in the circumstances to concede that the young man is perhaps nonetheless sick. I go to him. He smiles up at me, as if I was bringing him the most nutritioning kind of soup. Now both horses are whinnying. The noise is probably supposed to come from the higher regions in order to illuminate my examination. And now I'd find out that, yes indeed, the young man is ill. On his right side, in the region of the hip, a wound the size of the palm of one's hand has opened up. Rose-colored, in many different shadings, dark in depths, brighter on the edges, delicately grimed, with uneven patches of blood, opens to the light like a mine. That's what it looks like from a distance. Close up, Complication is apparent. Who can look at that without whistling softly? Worms, as thick and as long as my little finger, themselves rose-colored and also spattered with blood, are wriggling their white bodies with many limbs from their stronghold in the inner of the wound towards the light. Poor young man, there is no helping you. I have found your great wound. You are dying from this flower on your side. The family is happy. They see me doing something. The sister says that to the mother tells the father tells a few guests who are coming in on tiptoe through the moonlight of the open door, balancing themselves with outstretched arms. "Will you save me?" whispers the young man, sobbing, quite blinded by the life inside of his wound. That's how people are in my region, always demanding the impossible from the doctor. They have lost their old faith. The priest sits at home and tears his religious robes to pieces, one after the other, but the doctor is supposed to achieve everything with his delicate surgeon's hands. Well, that's what they like to think. I have not offered myself. If they use me for sacred purposes, I will let that happen to me as well. What more do I want, an old country doctor, robbed of my servant girl? And then they come, the families and the village elders, and take my clothes off. A choir of school children with the teacher at the head stands in front of the house and sings extremely simple melody with the words, "Take his clothes off, and then he will heal. And if it doesn't cure, then kill him. It's only a doctor. It's only a doctor." Then I am stripped out of my clothes, with my fingers in my beard and my head tilted to one side. I look at the people quietly. I am completely calm and clear about everything, and stay that way too, although it's not helping me at all, for they are now taking me by the hand and my feet and dragging me into bed. They lay me against the wall on the side of the wound. Then they all go out of the room. The door is shut. The singing stops. Clouds move in front of the moon. The bedclothes light warmly around me. In the open space of the window, the horses' heads sway like shadows. "Do you know?" I hear someone say in my ear. "My confidence in you is very small. You were shaken out from somewhere. You don't come on your own feet. Instead of helping, you give me less room on my deathbed. The best thing would be if I scratch your eyes out." "Right," I say. "It's a disgrace. But I am now a doctor. What am I supposed to do? Believe me, things are not as easy for me either." Should I be satisfied with that excuse? Alas, I will probably have to be. I always have to make do. I came into the world with a beautiful wound. That was all I was furnished with. "Young friend," I say, "your mistake is that you have no perspective. I've already been in all sick rooms far and wide, and I tell you your wound is not so bad. Made in tight corner with 2 blows from an axe. Many people offer their side and hardly hear the axe in the forest, to say nothing of the fact that it's coming closer to them. Is that really so, or are you deceiving me in my fever? It is truly so. Take the word of an honor of a medical doctor." He took my word and grew still. But now it was time for me to think about escape. The horses were still standing loyally in place. Clothes, fur coat and bag were quickly snatched up. I didn't want to delay by getting dressed. If the horses rushed out as they had on the journey out, I should in fact be springing out of the bed into my own, as it were. One horse obediently pulled back from the window. I threw the bundle into the carriage. The fur coat flew too far and was caught on a hook by only one arm. Good enough. I swung myself up onto the horse. The reins dragged loosely. One horse barely harnessed the other, the carriage swaying behind. Last of all, fur coat in the snow. "Giddy up," I say. But there was no getting up about it. We dragged through the snowy desert like old men. For a long time, the fresh but inaccurate singing of the children resounded behind us. Enjoy yourselves, your patients. The doctors laid in bed with you. I'll never come home at this rate. My flourishing practice is lost. A successor is robbing me, but not to avail, for he cannot replace me. In my house, the disgusting groom is wreaking havoc. Rosa is his victim. I will not think it through. Naked, abandoned to the frost of this unhappy age. With earthly carriage and an unearthly horses, I drive around by myself, an old man. My fur coat hangs behind the wagon, but I cannot reach it, and no one from the nimble ramble of patience lifts a finger. Betrayed. Betrayed. Once one has response to a false alarm on the night bell, there is no making it good again. Not ever.